gummy bear.
It is allegedly the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for September 30th, 2022. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, get in the front, baby, because we're going to Brooklyn. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Jan Ochoa. Jan, how are you doing?
I feel great. I smell like coffee grinds and garlic because I grated some garlic this morning. Fresh
what grade you give it? An A+, B-? What?
Jeff Grubb, I give that joke an A+.
Oh, thank you so much, Jan. Thank you.
No problem. Just for you, Jeff. Just for you.
So you've been packing? We got a big thing coming up next week. You've been packing? I got my notes here. It says you've been packing. I know in the green room my producers were asking you questions. It says here you were packing.
Well, I'm packing a lot of heat, let me tell you, Jeff. But I know that you got a lot of stuff in your frunk and your dump truck.
That's right, baby.
But I should have shipped all of our important gear earlier this week. But I also learned yesterday that all of the stuff that was just piled in the office was neatly organized in a fun little closet thanks to John Luke. So shouts out to John Luke.
What a good boy. That sounds so nice.
He's like the best.
Yeah, he just seems responsible is the word that comes to mind.
Yes, John Luke and Richard Lee from GameSpot, the best people in the world. Richard Lee also, what a nice guy.
I've never met Richard Lee. I can't wait.
They're the best people. I cannot confirm that enough. And I also found my one Apple box that I haven't seen in 3 years.
An Apple box? What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Oh. So an Apple box, it looks like an Apple crate, like a wooden one.
Sure.
But it's sealed, and it's normally used as like a little platform for people to just like a little step up.
Oh,
or
sure.
Sometimes like DJ T Money is saying, like Tom Cruise needs to look a little taller. So they place Tom Cruise or other short kings or queens onto an Apple box to raise them and whatnot.
Okay, so yeah, I've noticed in American movies, most of the time, everyone looks to be about the same height. They like that's like an important thing. Is that something that is true in like production for TV generally?
5,000%. 5,000%. Sometimes because everyone in the SF office was so tall, I would have to stand up on a platform to get the camera eye level.
Right. Okay, very good. Yeah, we had we had Josh recording us for Galloping Ghost, and Josh is definitely the short king, absolutely, and he was filming us, and so we got a lot of good angles of the underside of my beard, which I think is the best part of my beard, absolutely. Can't wait for that video to go live, everybody. I'm looking forward to Brooklyn. We got that coming up soon. For now, though, we have to get into this mess, but before we do so, let's explain what we do here. Each weekday, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, hello, Twitch. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, hello, YouTube. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Stadia is dead, in the voice, as Jeff Keighley would say. This is not too surprising, but it's official now. Here comes a blog post from Phil Harrison himself. A few years ago, we launched a consumer gaming service, Stadia. And while Stadia's approach to streaming games for consumers was built on a strong technological foundation, it hasn't gained the traction with users that we expected. So we've made the difficult decision to begin winding down our Stadia streaming service. Now, Jan, when you hear that, what do you think missing our targets means? Because my understanding is they missed it by almost 7 figures. Like 6 figures is what they were missing it by for sure. Almost 7 figures.
I think that is a safe assumption. I feel like their targets were astronomical, and Google doesn't seem like the company to try and move their goalposts at all to reasonable expectations.
Yeah, it's instead of moving the goalposts, right? They all right, well, this game's over then. We're done with this. That's how they've always been. It's not too surprising to find out, hey, they were always going to do the same thing with Stadia. Now, this is the punctuation mark on the sentence of that started with, we are ending our internal first-party studio development. We're closing all those studios, and we're not going to be investing in that anymore. And that happened last year. So now them officially pulling the plug on Stadia, not too surprising. What is maybe a little surprising, at least until you think about it a little bit, is that they are going to be pretty generous with refunds. Here's Harrison again. We will be refunding all Stadia hardware purchases made through the Google Store and all game and add-on content purchases made through the Stadia Store. Players will continue to have access to their games library and play through January 18th, 2023, so they can complete final play sessions. We expect to have the majority of refunds completed by mid-January 2023. So if you bought these things, if you bought a Chromecast Ultra thing with the controller to play Stadia, I think they're saying if you did that through the Google Store, you will be able to get a full refund. So
Is there a window for when? So is it just like since the very beginning of Stadia?
Yeah, from the very
now?
beginning, everything. Yes.
Wow.
Now that, I mean, it does. Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. But it's okay. You look at how much that would probably cost. It probably isn't that much when you compare it to the lawyer fees that you'd have to pay for potential class action lawsuits of people saying, "Oh, hey, these people bought a game on your service." And despite whatever your terms of service says, despite whatever whatever agreements you make people sign, there's still a good faith expectation that they're going to be able to access this product that you sold to them. And now you are taking it away. Well, okay, yeah, we're going to sue you. And we're going to sue you for a lot more than what you're probably going to end up paying. And then on top of that, you got to pay your legal team. This just is a clean, easy break, and they don't have to worry about any of that because it's just like, hey, no, Stadia, it was a lemon. Here's your money back. We'll take back whatever. Or you keep it or whatever, and now go have a good day. We're moving on. It's probably the only honest move that they had here. Still though, surprising, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I must have missed it. Does that also include the physical hardware to play Stadia as well that you can request? Wow.
Yes, so you can. It includes the hardware. You're going to get to keep that Chromecast and the Stadia controller, which is actually a pretty decent controller, as people have been pointing out today. I have two of them, and I've only ever really used them for Stadia, but still, like they're nice. I bought a Stadia game, like it was mentioned a couple weeks ago.
You bought a Stadia game like the other week, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, my kids can play it now through January, and then after that, no more Piku Niku for you kids. That's not true. I got it on like 5 different things. But yeah, so that's maybe the weirder side of things is all the hardware purchases. I could easily see the software stuff being like, there's licenses involved there. The hardware is, well, you buy hardware and things become out of date, and that's not unreasonable. But no, they're just going to give all that money back. And again, that probably speaks to the idea that there aren't that many Stadia owners out there at all. Period.
No, I can't imagine that it jumps up to the amount where they would take a massive hit.
Yeah, it's just kind of, you can move on with this technology, do other partnerships, and then they speak to that idea. Phil Harrison says, hey, we are going to integrate this technology into stuff with YouTube, for example. We'll see whatever that ends up looking like. But it's probably not going to be any sort of major gaming service ever again. All that said, there's two sides to this that I want to discuss with you, Jan. There's the side that a new competitor coming into the space in a way that we haven't really seen since like Microsoft and then Sony before that. Do you think there's, regardless of the delivery method for the games, cloud or new hardware, do you think there's room in the market for someone else, even as big as Google, to come in and compete on that front?
I definitely think so. Like, I really find xCloud to be incredibly appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of the problem with Stadia was always just where are the games and then having to buy the games.
Yes.
And they're all full price games as well. So that definitely was a big hurdle for myself to jump through. And I bet for a lot of other folks too. But there's definitely space for someone to take up the cloud gaming. It's not even a throne, but I guess the space.
Yes. I mean, it's one more method of delivering things, and it's going to be, tertiary to people who have already found multiple ways of accessing video games over the years. The idea is slowly a world will get built up where a lot of people's primary way of accessing games is through the cloud. That probably still does happen, right? It probably still does. We get to, I mean, you long enough timeline, we probably are all on cloud games eventually, no matter what. 50 years from now, is it going to matter that much? You'll probably have your character, and maybe they'll give you even some like local save data or whatever that you can. Once you log in, it's like, oh yeah, bring your save data with you. That's like a fun collectible, but it'll be a novelty to have local data. I think maybe now that doesn't mean all physical local games will go away. That stuff probably will still exist, but the biggest game in the world are already live service games. Really, is it that much of a jump to say, okay, yeah, you download Fortnite right now to access Fortnite to, oh, the experience is exactly the same if we just stream the cloud version to you or just beam it from the internet, whatever. You don't even think about the word cloud. It's not that much of a stretch, I don't think. Roblox is not that much of a stretch just going completely into the cloud.
No, I think the biggest stopgap right now is just data caps and internet speeds across the board. But hey, you know, if things go well for that on that front, I definitely don't see cloud gaming being that hard of an adjustment. I can tell you right now, I don't think I have bought a physical CD or like a Blu-ray in the past 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And like any media purchases that aren't games, I mean, including games, actually, like everything I've bought is pretty much digital. Like
you
I
have
can't
a
even
PS5, right?
Exactly. I have the digital version.
Oh, you have the digital version. Me too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have the digital version. Yeah.
Like I can't even get a physical movie ticket in most theaters now, right?
Right.
I'm not saying the death of not social media, of physical media, but like it is an adjustment that I feel like we are headed to, whether or not we want to or not.
Yeah. This is people are mentioning in chat, this sounds like a gaming dystopia, and there's definitely reasons to think that way if you are someone who does have a library of games, whether that library is physical or even digital, like Steam. Steam is a proven entity that doesn't feel like it's on the cusp of ever going away or whatever. So, having that library is important to people, and having access to it and being able to play in offline mode, all that stuff is important. But and I think, like I said, many of those kinds of games will continue getting made, I think, forever. It's just obviously the money is going, the more money is going toward the bigger, more connected games that are online experiences. And as those continue coming out, there is probably one day just going to be a switch where they are all hosted locally on a server. I mean, that's one of the ways to solve cheating to one end. So they'll come up with the reasons for why this is good for you. And there will be some backlash initially, but then a year or two later, people will just forget all about it and be like, this is how I play that game that I really love. So
it's also like a weird accessibility issue because like not a lot of people, even in the US, have good internet speeds, even in metropolitan cities. But I feel like if that issue becomes solved, then cloud gaming evens the playing field for virtually every gamer that has access to something like a tablet or even a web browser, right? Because then you get little Jimmy and Bimmy down the street that can now just fire up Google Chrome and play Gears of War 5 with each other or Resident Evil 5 with each other, right? With something like cloud gaming.
Yeah, exactly. And it's we'll see what the transition is exactly like. Obviously, no company's going to be able to navigate it exactly right because we just saw Google completely drop the ball. Amazon Luna is a thing. And while that seems like a better strategy, it also isn't making waves. It's not getting a lot of attention. People don't talk about it. People don't really seem to be using it. I wouldn't be surprised if its numbers are pretty similar to what happened with Google Stadia. Maybe a little bit better because, for a subscription fee, you could just get like all the Ubisoft games.
Right.
And then integrating into Xbox Game Pass and the Xbox ecosystem, that's great too. But then once again, you're dealing with a customer base that already is happy to play games on their consoles. So none of these companies have figured out how to push to the point that we're talking about, but they are all going to keep trying for the most part, it seems like. And there's a lot of reasons why developers will like it. Now, Something the developers don't like is working on a game for a platform that then has the plug pulled on it. And that has happened to multiple studios who just found out that Stadia was closing by reading that blog post. I just got a couple of examples. Tangle Tower was due to launch on Stadia in 2 days' time, and this article was the first I heard about it shutting down, said Tom Vian, one half of Snipperclip studio SFB Games.
Wow.
Other developers felt similarly sucker punched. We have a title coming out November 1st, replied Rebecca Hyman. Now we hear about this. So people were actively working on games that were going to be running on Stadia, and that's not like, you just click a button and now it's on Stadia. They were putting work into that with some expectations that they'd be able to make some money on the other side, and now all that work is for nothing. The store's probably closed, right? If they're giving refunds on everything, they're probably not enabling you to buy new games like right now. So I don't know what happens to these games. It's not just that though. Games Radar has a story here about a player who has 6,000 hours on Red Dead Redemption 2, begging Rockstar to let them transfer their character somehow, some way.
Oh, buddy.
Right. That is just, everyone could have told you, Google pulls the plug on everything. What are you doing? But you get started. Who knows? You don't even know if you're going to be into Red Dead Redemption 2. You start playing it. Oh, it works great on the cloud. This is fine. I can play it wherever I want. I'm playing on my lunch break. This is great. And then you look up and suddenly the service that you're playing on is being shut down. It's like, oh man, of course, Google's doing this, but I've already played 6,000 hours. Please give me some way. This is the dystopia part that everyone's always talking about, where you don't own your data, you don't own the game. These things can be taken away from you by someone else, and that I think that philosophical reasoning is the biggest hurdle for all these companies, right?
Totally. I mean, even with stuff like Game Pass and everything, just save data being incredibly hard. I know it is an issue with myself personally I can't even sometimes trust cloud saves on PlayStation platforms or even Steam, right? Because I will wind up mucking something up. I can't imagine investing that much time into a cloud service game and then being at a crossroads where it's like, all right, 6,000 hours of my life are just going to be gone.
Yeah, it's there's something intrinsic about cloud gaming that it maybe forces you to think that these things are more disposable and less permanent and therefore less important. It's just popcorn, throwaway, trash entertainment, and don't worry about it too much. And I think people have a much deeper relationship with gaming than that for the most part. Even people who you might consider casual. They're casual because they play like one or two games that they're really into. They come to Madden once a year. They come to they just play The Sims. Right. You start talking about like messing around with their save data or their save data being ripped away from them. That is also a nightmare to them. It covers the entire spectrum of people that play games. It's again, we have deep relationships with these things. So that might continue to be the thing that really keeps people from feeling like they can embrace the cloud or other things like that as well. There's another side of the Stadia story. Stadia turned down an exclusive Death Stranding follow-up from Kojima. This comes from Kyle Bradshaw at 9 to 5 Google. Before Google closed down the division in 2021, Stadia Games and Entertainment turned down the opportunity to have an exclusive follow-up to Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding. So there was a whole bunch of these kinds of games. Some game companies like Harmonix had been publicly confirmed to be working on Stadia titles, while names like Yu Suzuki and Hideo Kojima were reported after the fact. A source told 9 to 5 Google that the Kojima game he was working on was meant to be a Stadia exclusive follow-up to Death Stranding, a game which initially launched as a PlayStation exclusive in 2019. Where the original Death Stranding was an asynchronous multiplayer game where actions taken in your world affected other people's games, the proposed game for Stadia would be a strictly single-player experience, and that's what led Stadia, and specifically, I guess, Phil Harrison, to cancel the project. Obviously, now we know that Kojima stopped working with Stadia after all this fell out and went to Xbox, and now he's working on a cloud game with them. I guess we'll see what that actually turns into. But yeah, not too surprising. Like, they were looking at the numbers and saying that this is not going to be worth it, and what's going to move the needle is probably not going to be another single player game. we need our own Destiny before anything else, is probably what they are thinking. Even though that's, you could probably, with a big Kojima single player game, you could probably draw a lot of eyes and make a lot of media attention. You probably still are thinking, when I look at how people actually come to games, I know that, Destiny is the thing that works for us the most, so we want one of those instead. I'm not too surprised to hear this, right?
I think he might be bad at business. I mean, his track record, he's been at Google for however long now, but like
Phil Harrison we're talking about here. Yes.
Phil Harrison. Yes. And it feels like with cloud gaming, one of the biggest things that I'm constantly worried about would be the competitive aspect because of latency.
Yeah.
That fear does not kick in when I am playing a single player game, especially something that maybe more absorb the atmosphere, like a Death Stranding Kojima game, especially if it's a follow-up.
Yep.
And I feel like, I'm not the biggest fan of Kojima. I enjoy his work, but I definitely feel like it is understated how many people would at least check out a platform for a Kojima game.
Yes.
And how much power that brings, especially if it's an exclusive.
Right.
Sure, maybe the numbers were that like this game would be in development for too long. Maybe Phil saw the writing on the wall himself that Stadia may be on its way out as soon as they launched it. And he thought this might not be worth it. But I don't know if those were the thoughts that he had. I think it's more similar to what you're alluding to, that, oh, this isn't a multiplayer game. This isn't a Destiny, so why even bother? I think it's like the weird mentality that it has to be a live service game for it to thrive and survive.
Yeah, I think it's when you're backed into a corner at one of these companies, and you're like, well, we need the big thing. I think that's the only thing that's really going to occur to an executive. And I agree. I mean, Phil Harrison's been at a lot of companies, and just sort of one after the other, it's been pretty similar to this, where you understand what you're doing. It doesn't seem like you get it. It seems like, you have a vague understanding of the way people engage with games, and it doesn't go much deeper than that. And I mean, Stadia is the best example of that. But I mean, he oversaw like Dreamcast, and I think he was there for the Xbox. I can't remember exactly his history, everybody, but he was definitely has a record of kind of overseeing things that crashed and burned a little bit. And then, and now Stadia, like, it's so obvious that this was just set up incorrectly from the beginning to ever win anyone over. I said this on a podcast last night, but I was in an early meeting with Stadia, and I think Phil Harrison was in that meeting. But the person answering most of the questions was another executive or whatever. And I'm like, hey, people aren't going to be super happy about just buying games to stream from the cloud, right? There's got to be something closer to a subscription. And they got defensive, and they thought like there's nothing wrong with this. People buy licenses for games on Steam all the time. And I'm like, I get that. That's not how people are going to view this, though, right? The people are not going to actually see it that way. And they were staunchly like, no, people are going to get this. And I think everyone in chat, everyone listening later, you and I, Jam, we could say, no, we told you from the beginning this wasn't going to work. You could have listened, but you didn't. And now here we are, Stadia closed, and a bunch of weird stuff left in its wake, like players not able to get their save data out of the service, and a bunch of developers that worked on stuff that's not going to come out now.
Like, I know it's very fun to poo-poo on Phil Harrison, and then like, oh, we all knew that Google Stadia was going to fail, but then I do really feel bad for like the other human aspect of Google Stadia, where there are these developers, these studios that invested time in like Stadia specific projects, or that Red Dead Redemption player that spent 6,000 hours. That's like over 250 days playing a game.
Yep.
And I know that you and I don't like Red Dead Redemption 2.
Correct.
Yes. But I know that game means a lot to people. There's a lot of escapism. That player may not be able to get any of that back.
Yep. It's a weird situation, but also one that was entirely predictable. All right, let's move on to some of these other stories. Saudi Arabia says it will spend $13 billion to acquire a leading game publisher. Yeah, here it goes. Saudi Arabia will invest a further $37.8 billion in total to make more games industry acquisitions. That includes that $13 billion to acquire a leading game publisher. And that's quote unquote a leading game publisher. We'll get into that in a second. This all comes from the state media there in Saudi Arabia. The investments will be made via the country's Savvy Games Group, which is owned by the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is their big initiative to diversify their economy beyond just being a gas station with an army. And it's I don't know if Saudi Arabia actually has an army, but a gas station. But it wants to be a major player in video games. And so it's setting aside this $18.6 billion of that total for minority stake investments in a bunch of different companies, and then $13.3 billion to acquire a major publisher. I'm trying, I think everyone's trying to work backwards from that number and figure out who it could be. I'll say, Jan, EA's market capitalization is like $36 billion. Take-Two is way above $13 billion. And if you were to acquire those companies, you'd have to pay a premium on top of that. So maybe Ubisoft, maybe more likely than that, Embracer, a company that Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund already has a relationship with, has already given $1 billion to make acquisitions itself. So maybe $13 billion seems like a lot for Embracer, but maybe that's been the strategy all along. Go out and make as many acquisitions as possible to inflate the price as much as possible, so that when Saudi Arabia does step in, they have a lot of stuff to work with. I don't know. That's all just speculation. But does any other major publisher stand out to you as a possibility?
Is Square more than 13 billion?
Yeah. Yes, a little bit, but not that much more. Let me just look at the market capitalization while we're having this conversation.
I didn't think of Embracer was not one of the first publishers that popped up into my head.
Well,
but
because they do specify AAA publisher, and is Embracer that? But I mean, is that just our opinion versus whoever's in charge of this fund?
Right. Like I know that Final Fantasy 14 is huge for Square right now, but then with all of their other ways of running their company, folks are saying maybe Sega, maybe Capcom.
Yeah. Oh man, 13 billion. So. If I did the math right here, the market capitalization of Square Enix is about $5.2 billion. You could see the premium on that easily being within that $13 billion range. Now, of course, obviously, everybody hurdles for a foreign country to acquire a domestic company within Japan. Those things have been loosened a little bit. It is still possible, but it has to be approved by the government. And is Japan going to want to approve Saudi Arabia taking over a major publisher within the country? I find that far-fetched. I think a lot of people would probably agree with that, but who knows? Money talks. And Japan, I think, has working relationships with Saudi Arabia, so maybe they don't see it that way. Maybe they don't. I don't know. Basically, though, yeah, I think Sega also is for that, and that same, all those same caveats apply. Sega, sure. But $13 billion can get you a pretty big, that would be the second biggest acquisition in the video game industry ever, because previously it was obviously 70 or 69 billion for Activision, but then like 12-ish billion for Zynga by Take-Two. So 13 billion's more than that. So obviously it's going to be someone big, and then we say major publishers, maybe a mobile game company, but again, they do specify AAA. So, and this wealth fund has made investments in that space. They've SNK. I think they've invested in Capcom, a few others. So they're making moves in that space already. So clearly they might be continuing along that path.
I'm trying to think who would be like the most appealing. And then I think it would be a company in a position like Capcom or Square. I guess Sega also, but then I just don't know what they would want with Sega unless they really, really are excited about Sonic Frontiers.
Yeah. I mean, and who isn't really, right? Yeah. I'd pay $13 billion to play Sonic Frontiers early too if I had that kind of money. Obviously, the big underlying story here is Saudi Arabia's crown prince, who was in charge of all this, had a journalist murdered, and so the idea of him owning more stuff that we interact with day to day is a giant bummer, and it sucks, and it's makes playing their games that he's funding feel immoral and bad.
Yeah.
And there's no great answer here. I mean, there's a flat out sort of policy of, okay, if they're involved, I won't play it anymore, and I respect anyone who does that. I think I make that decision. I pick and choose when I sometimes I do that. I'm kind of feeling that way about Hogwarts Legacy, so why wouldn't I feel about that about all the games that this might end up touching? I might. We'll see.
Yeah.
But also, there is no, there's no way to consume things ethically under capitalism, period. Someone's being exploited somewhere. If you go far enough up the chain, there's probably more murder involved. But that doesn't mean we have to just say, then it's okay. Every time someone murders a journalist, it's okay to go give them more money. It sucks. If someone could do something to stop it, I would love to see that happen. It's just the money is too much. So it's probably going to this is going to keep happening. Saudi Arabia is going to take over more of the games industry right alongside Tencent and others. So, yeah, it's kind of just a bummer story, and there's nothing else to be said about it. There's not much we can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's because of Saudi Arabia's involvement with SNK that my enthusiasm and excitement for the Metal Gear Solid Tactics game immediately dipped.
Yes. Metal Slug Tactics. Yes. Yeah.
Metal Slug Tactics. Yeah.
Yes.
Not Gear.
Same.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I could see that mistake easily. Metal Slug Tactics is one same. Like it was so easy to get. Like I think that game looks fantastic. It's got tiles, Jan, and then it's like oh, they are investing in SNK and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, great, wonderful. Let's keep moving though. Ubisoft announces playtest for new session-based co-op shooter Project U. This comes from Tom Ivan at VGC. Not much here. I just want to read a couple bullet points here. The company said Project U explores a new concept of session-based co-op shooter where many players unite to prevail against an overwhelming threat. The game is in early stages of development and will have its first PC-only closed test in Western Europe. Mostly, I just kind of want to talk about this, Jan, because Ubisoft testing another online shooter of whatever variation at this point. Clearly, they want one of these to work. They had Hyperscape. They're going back to Heartland. I think it's Heartland. After putting that game on the shelf, as I reported previously, that game got set aside. And they're like, well, now all these other games aren't working. We're going to go back to Heartland. And at the same time, they're working on this next one. So they're just going to keep working on shooters, I think, until they have something to go alongside Siege. Do you think, I mean, we really know nothing about this, but do you think this sort of scattershot approach can eventually work? Like, what other option do they have if they want to hit shooter?
I don't know what is the proper approach, but the current method that they're running with of just shooting stuff at a wall and seeing what'll stick, I don't think is working. Because what was the 4v1 PvE game that came out last year? Outbreak?
Yes. Rainbow Six Outbreak or whatever they changed the name to. Yes.
Right. That came and went. I completely forgot about Hyperscape.
Yes.
Extraction. That's what it was called.
Okay, yes.
Sure. I think Outbreak was the original name or something. Or maybe I'm just misremembering.
No, you're right. Outbreak was the name, and then they changed it because we were dealing with an actual outbreak.
It was Quarantine.
Quarantine. That's right. Yes, thank
Apologies,
you. Okay,
folks.
yes.
Thank you for the corrections.
Yes, thank you. Shouts.
I just don't know. It just doesn't seem like all these half-hearted attempts, and I feel rude saying half-hearted attempts, but all these attempts at throwing something and seeing if it'll stick doesn't seem like the right approach versus this is an instance of let's put our eggs in all in one basket and actually put our faith in something rather than half-heartedly throwing stuff at the wall. Yeah,
it's I think that strategy worked for them too. I guess if you look back in hindsight with Siege, where they they went all in on that after, they committed to it, and that's what ended up making it work. And all these other instances make it feel like they really want another one. They just don't believe in any of them, and that's especially difficult in a time when we are getting so many competitors. Someone just linked to this one called the Finals, which is made by former ex-DICE people. Looks pretty good. There's a couple of shooters coming out from other ex-DICE people that I'm trying to remember the name of. They're But like there's multiple studios now that have splintered off from these existing developers, and they're working on similar games that are going to have major budgets and are going to be able to compete with any studio on earth, even up to maybe not including Call of Duty, but anything below that. So it kind of feels like you need to not be so scattershot. You kind of don't need to. It's like the mobile gaming approach is what Ubisoft is doing. Cheap, fast, and we're going to put out a lot of it, and whichever one works, then we just go in all in on that one. And that does work on mobile. It just seems like you need more investment and more belief in what you're putting out on console and PC. And I don't know, Ubisoft just doesn't seem like they're in that space right now.
Yo, if they made like a mobile version of Siege, I think that would blow up.
Yeah,
if they did the work.
I think they definitely have some mobile version. I don't know if it's Rainbow Six, but they have mobile games coming that are shooters.
Oh.
There is mobile. Okay, yeah, man. All right. I might actually check that out because I love Siege. Siege is a good game.
Yes, I think we as a staff should play Siege.
Let's do it. Let's definitely do it. I would love that. Let's make it happen. It's a good time. We can get
what
Mike
are those
Mahardy.
Nextlander people doing?
Yeah. That would be really fun. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. Let's do it.
Us and Mahardy versus them and Abby.
There. Let's do it. And watch Abby still just destroys us.
Yeah, that's probably gonna happen. Honestly.
Phil Spencer says Xbox will look at letting players disable Quick Resume. Quick Resume is the feature that enables you to pick up a game like a save state, but for modern games on the Xbox Series X and S. This does break a lot of online games, though. People have been pointing out PUBG, FIFA, Halo Infinite. If you leave your Xbox to go eat dinner or whatever, and you're in the middle of a session, not even in the middle of a game, but like middle of a session and in between matches, and then you come back to it, it breaks the game. It breaks the connection to the server, and then you have to hard reset the game. You have to hard turn it off and then restart the game completely. And so while, obviously would hope there's a fix for that where it's like, oh, this game just came back from Quick Resume. Let's just reset the connection to everything. That while waiting for that fix, Phil Spencer replied to someone who was pointing out this problem, saying, oh, this is a good idea to be able to turn it off. If you could just turn off Quick Resume for certain games, then you wouldn't encounter this. And it's like, you just go back to the game normally and you don't have to go through the whole process of going in there, seeing that it's broken, then restarting it. And so they're going to look at incorporating that at some point. But he just said, good feature ask, makes sense. We will put it on the list of things to look at. So that's nice. God of War's PC port studio says it's working with Sony on a flagship live service game. From Tom Ivan at VGC, the studio behind the PC version of God of War has said it's working with Sony on a flagship live service game. Vancouver, Canada-based Jetpack Interactive is also working on the God of War series, it's claimed, perhaps suggesting that plans are in motion to bring the upcoming PlayStation sequel God of War Ragnarok to PC sooner rather than later. Of course, they could still be working on like updates to the last God of War one, but I also wouldn't be surprised if just get to work on Ragnarok, we'll get that port ready, and then we'll save it for whenever we're ready, or maybe we'll put it out way sooner than anyone's expecting. It's probably going to be somewhere in between. But Jetpack says that they are working on something that is featuring one of Sony's flagship IPs for one of the big live service games that Sony says it's working on. Sony wants to release 10 live service games by 2026. And so this studio apparently is making one of those with a flagship IP. Whenever I hear that, I think SOCOM. We're getting a SOCOM.
I wish it was a SOCOM. I don't know why I wish it's a SOCOM at this point.
Same.
Shot in the dark, it's going to be... Sony's going to put all their eggs back in the Little Big Planet basket.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be the time it blows up.
The live service Little Big Planet plus Home, they come together and you play as little sack boys and you're decorating your apartments, and all those not NFT things from PlayStation Stars is how you decorate it. That sounds perfect to me.
Yep. Let's do it.
Let's see here. 6 Days in Fallujah documentary to be featured at London's Imperial War Museum. This comes from Dean Takahashi over at GamesBeat. Victura's documentary related to its 6 Days in Fallujah video game will be featured at an exhibit for video games depicting war at London's Imperial War Museum. The game was canceled once, then it was revived by Victura, and it has still faced criticism as war propaganda. The Imperial War Museum has gathered a number of video games for exhibit called War Games, Real Conflicts, Virtual Worlds, Extreme Entertainment. It has a wide range of titles from civilian-oriented This War of Mine, to the realistic shooter Sniper Elite 5. realistic's kind of a stretch there, Dean. The exhibit opens today and runs through May 28th, 2023. Jan, I keep forgetting this game is still somehow kicking around and still like threatening to come out. The last time this game reared its head, it kind of sort of bopped back down pretty quickly by a lot of critics who are saying this is a bad idea. The whole idea of 6 Days of Fallujah is that the studio says that we're going to talk to people who are really involved in the Battle of Fallujah and make a game that represents their experience. So we talked to a whole bunch of Marines, and we talked to a whole bunch of other U.S. soldiers, and we talked to some Iraqis, and then we talked to more Marines, we talked to more soldiers. So it's like, wait, what? How many civilians that were actually there did you talk to? Were they willing to talk? Is this going to be an equal representation from multiple sides and multiple point of views? Or is this going to be war propaganda with a little bit of sprinkling of, and here's what the locals were like? If it is that sounds like something we don't necessarily need, or at least I'm going to be very critical of it, and this studio is going to have to deal with that. They seem to be like, oh, guess we'll deal with it. We're going to keep putting it out. Or is this, does this feel like another one of those just, oh, this is maybe some publicity to get some more attention to maybe get a publisher or something at this point? I don't know. I don't know what the point of this is.
I don't know what the point of it is either. The studio, and now reading the name of this museum, begs the question of, yo, dog, read the room.
The Imperial War Museum. It's a bit of a...
Yeah, that seems like a fun place. I wonder what's in their gift shop.
Yeah, it's that countries online celebrating their L's, like Twitter account is what this feels like. Yeah, we're a bunch of we're very excited about our imperialism. Okay, maybe I'm misreading what that Imperial War Museum is implying. I would not name something that personally.
I'll go ahead and misread the situation completely. Maybe there are other museums in London also that should maybe give back the shit that they stole.
Yeah, right.
And that's not feature stuff.
Isn't that like, when I think of museum in London, I'm like already on like my face. I'm like, I don't know about you. I don't know if I trust you at all. And so the idea that you're and England's or the UK's involvement with that war was also very problematic. So just overall, every single beat of this makes me feel bad and makes me feel like this is still a game I don't have any interest in seeing come to completion. Even if it does, I'm not going to be like, oh, we have to ban it. It's not what I'm saying, but I'm going to criticize the hell out of it unless it is somehow surprising me in every single way, which seems very unlikely right now.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say it's not going to happen.
All right, let's see here. I'm going to get to this poll from yesterday. All right, here we go. How do you feel about Overwatch 1 getting replaced by Overwatch 2? I asked this yesterday, and let's see, we got 9.1% saying it's exciting, 24.2% saying it's weird, but oh well. 32.2% say it's a mess, and then 34.5% say no thoughts, head empty. Which, shout out to y'all. Glad you're out there representing all of us there. Yeah, this is I think about right where a good portion of people are like, listen, I don't know, a quarter of people are like, it's weird. I'm just gonna play this game. I'm not gonna think about it too much. But another third saying, this feels like it's just going to be weird to go in a world where Overwatch 1 is no longer accessible. It's just going to go away. And I do feel weird about that. I don't know, Jim, when you hear something like that, it's like, okay, here we're talking about cloud gaming, how that's a threat. Overwatch is not a cloud game. And yet here we are. It is its history is going to be essentially inaccessible. It's not a race. You could still be able to go watch videos and criticism, and there's going to be a million hours of gameplay out there you could watch. But you're not going to be able to go experience yourself easily with through official channels, and that does feel strange, right?
Yeah, and I've seen some folks whose opinion on Overwatch that I trust just be mixed, like incredibly mixed, and I think it's funny that the Gundam Overwatch game came out either earlier this week or last week, around the same time before Overwatch 2 is popping off, and I just don't. I'm still confused, and I feel like I've kept up to date with what Overwatch 2 is.
Yes.
And it's just I don't know what I'm getting into.
Yeah. even the people who I know are fans of Overwatch, that no one's no one has unbridled excitement. Or maybe I guess maybe this 9.1% of people, maybe they do. I haven't met any of them. All the Overwatch fans I know are mostly sort of they're stepping gingerly into Overwatch 2 to see if it's going to be welcoming or not. And I think many of them still have a lot of reservations. All right, let's ask tomorrow's question. Is cloud gaming still inevitable? I'm going to hit Game Mess Mornings. While I get this set up, Jan, do we have anything else happening on Giant Bomb today?
So a couple scheduling updates, folks. If you're watching live right now, we do have to push Sekiro Ochoa. We got a meeting popping off that we got to attend to. UPF should still be happening at the normal time. That's like 1:00 p.m., 3 p.m. Eastern time. Wherever you are else in the world, I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head. But yeah, you guys, I'd love to welcome you into the meeting. 4 p.m. Eastern. So I see I'm just bad at time. If time does allow, Dan and I should be recording a couple quick looks. Unfortunately, it's not a guarantee just due to timing constraints.
Right. I was going to try to fit in like some grounded planning today, but this just popped up on us. So we're going to go deal with this, and then we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, we'll see where we're at. Also next week, folks, if you haven't heard by now, the Great Giant Bombathon is popping off live. That'll be on Wednesday of next week, October 5th, starting 12 p.m. Eastern. Again, if you want me to translate what time zone that is, I'm sorry, friends, I don't know.
But basically, just tune into twitch.tv/giantbomb that day and come hang out with us. We're going to be going all day. Like, once it starts, we're just going to keep going.
There will also not be a live bombcast next week. We'll all be traveling, so that'll be a pre-recorded joint. Primarily, it'll be voicemails and emails.
Yeah, send your emails.
Send your emails, bombcast@giantbomb.com. Send your voicemails, video game related this time, to 707 Exit Flu, and we'll try and get those on the show.
We still should be doing UPF though, right? Today we think we should be done with the meeting by then.
Should be done by the meeting by then, and have time to get unprofesh.
Cool. All right, everybody. We'll see you all for that. And I guess we'll check you out on the other side. We will have an episode of Game Mess Morning on Monday, so look out for that. But then the rest of the week, almost certainly not going to happen. I'm going to be traveling, and we haven't figured out a process for like guest hosts from outside the site. That's something we'll figure it out down the line once things become more solidified. But for now, Monday, I'll see you then. Until then, though, you are the best audience in gaming. I always appreciate it. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.